Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Welcome back to the second part of my interview with Roz Campbell from Tsuno. This interview is the first in a two-part series that's focused solely on the unique challenges that confront founder-owners of social enterprises and for-purpose businesses when it comes to exiting. Tsuno, by the way, is a social enterprise that sells disposable, sustainable sanitary pads and organic tampons, donates 50% of its profits to charities that empower women, such as One Girl and others. So we'll go now to the second part where Roz talks about how and why she reached a really pivotal decision on whether or not to sell a shareholding in her business. If you missed part one, you can always check it out on the Small Business Banter podcast.
I basically got to the end of the trial period and I thought it was really fun working with her. It was really challenging as well. We got along really well, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I couldn't have a business partner, basically. It's like, I think if it comes down to it where decisions have to be made, that I have to share those decisions and the risk of like financial stuff is shared as well. I felt really uncomfortable with it.
Okay.
And yeah, I offered her and I asked her if I was like, I don't want to do a partnership, but I'm open for you to buy it if you want to.
So that's when again, a really smart way to go about it. You tried it. You could still have a conversation at the end. The joint venture wasn't looking right, but you were still communicating, and that's when you said, well, how about you buy it?
Yep. So, yeah, communication, I feel, and I think she would agree that we're very open with each other and still good friends actually. But yeah, she declined to purchase it, I think, because she realised how much work was involved, and seeing what I do on a daily basis that she knew that she couldn't do. She was like, I don't think she couldn't make it profitable in the time frame that she wanted to make it profitable if she had to outsource all that work.
Right. So so it would have, she would have had to take on resources to do some of the things you did really well, and that didn't make it viable for her.
Yeah.
So it, the discussions ended gracefully.
Yep.
Yep. And how long ago?
I think she was disappointed, but also she's understood.
Yeah. Yeah, but you both went about it in a really constructive way, and so that's, as I said at the beginning, that's your kind of near exit experience. You hadn't planned for it, but something came along. You dealt with it in a really positive and mature way. I can't think of a better way to describe it, but there are so many businesses that are launched where people literally just say, this is a great idea, let's do it together, and they have no sense of they have no conception that it might not actually work, and so they end up, and this could be family members and close friends and even life partners, and it's a whole other thing, getting into business with someone that you know or is related. But a lot of those end really terribly, and they've got nothing like what you had outlined, which is an agreement that we'll trial it. We'll have a discussion at the end to see if it's working, and if it doesn't, we'll go our separate ways. So well done to you both, really.
Thanks. I think that was driven by her previous experience with her other business. Something like that had happened where she started it with a friend and it hadn't turned out positively, and so she was very, very good with contracts and expectations.
Yep.
So, I'm really grateful that was her attitude.
Yeah. Okay. So we roll on. How long since that the end of that process? Was it
It was like nearly a year ago. I think we ended it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for you personally now as a sole owner, has that changed anything?
Yeah, I think the process, like engaging you for your services to look at what the business was worth, and that kind of process, and just even having chats with you helped me think about like the business a bit differently rather than just plodding along. I've actually started thinking, what can I improve and where is it better to spend my time, and the profit and loss, like looking at that and how it will look to a future buyer if I do want to sell it in the future, like actually being a bit more motivated on that part.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the diagnostic, the business owner's diagnostic that I work with owners on, and I'm glad to hear you say that. Yeah, you've reframed things. I mean, there's that. No doubt, there's still that personal connection and passion with what you do, but seeing it through the eyes of a buyer down the track is always a really smart thing to do. And it sounds like you've what particularly do you think you've done in regards to that?
I think making it way less personal, and looking at my time and effort and where I should be spending that, where it's important to cut costs and where it's not important, and
right.
I think that would be the main thing. But also, it's kind of in subtle ways it's touched lots of different things, and maybe it's just my attitude to the business is that I could sell this, like it could be quite valuable if I apply myself.
Right. So you got within range of selling the business. It's fair to say, isn't it? Like you seriously discussed that.
I probably would have sold it if she'd agreed.
So there you go, and it's it's a very positive thing to have happened. I mean, you now kind of maybe got more awareness of the financial outcomes of the business, what that might mean for a buyer, what it might mean for value, where you can increase value. So, that's so are you from there, have you decided more specifically about your longer term plans to stay in the business and or exit?
I think no long-term plans yet, but I think like the next 5 years I definitely have in my mind that I'm going to keep working on it.
Yep.
Nothing beyond that really.
Right. So if you were an advisor to other owners who are in their business and they have their good days and their bad days, and what would you say to them about the process you've been through, and more generally about being ready to sell because someone might knock on the door or because things happen to them where they just can't continue to run the business? What are the key things you'd say other owners should think about?
I think that doing a little mini diagnostic on the business and what it would be worth, even if you're not thinking of selling it.
Yeah. So what is it worth today in a
Yeah, and
if you
just
had
getting
to.
that knowledge of like business as usual, it's worth this much, and maybe there are some small changes you can make, or big changes, or I feel like it's quite inspiring to do that, and to you can just be plodding along and you're working in the business, not on it, that kind of mentality. But if you maybe spend a week, or I don't know how long these things take, but look at it from a buyer's perspective, like what are the valuable parts? What are the bits that, like that's another thing probably that I've started thinking about it, like how much the business relies on my knowledge. How can I change those things so that it doesn't rely on me as much, and can still operate as normal?
Yeah.
To make it easy for someone to take it over.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is, if the more, I mean, it's hard to find the time and money and energy and whatever to do those things, but there's kind of two upsides. One is it does make your business easier to sell. It's a general rule across the board. The less dependent it is on the owner, the more valuable it is to buyers. The really interesting thing is that if you find as an owner you get it to the point where it's not so reliant on you, the value you have, or the choices you have are greater, because it's also true you're not under much pressure to sell because you're burning out.
Yes.
It's really,
exactly.
It's a really interesting conundrum. So it's more valuable to buyers, but I think, you're going to find yourself, well, it has to be a good deal for me to get out because it's not causing me the same stresses, or I'm not putting in the same amount of hours. And frankly, you might just hold on for a bigger and better price, because if you have a small business that's working well, it's pretty hard to match the returns out of them, by putting the money in the bank or buying shares.
Yeah, and that's another thing I've realised is this investment that I've cultivated in doing this. Yeah, it's just thinking about the time you put in, and this, like the things you go without when you're first starting, and how that relates to if you were to invest your money into something else. It's shown me what potential there is for my future, rather than just feeling like I'm, I don't know, digging myself a hole.
Look, it's great that you say that, Roz. It's really, I'm hoping that other listeners would take a lot of inspiration from that, because, it's not easy to start a business, but if you do all those hard things, it's great to invest and build the business and think about selling one day. But it's also, if you've got a good one and it can run partially under management, why not keep it as well? I'm a massive fan of that. But it's not and there's good reasons to sell, even if it is under management or partially under management. There's always changes in people's lives, and you need to keep an eye on that. So at the start, we talked about Tsuno being part of, it donates 50% of its profits. So you classify it as part of the for-purpose, the cause or social enterprise sector.
Yep.
Is that an advantage for the business?
I think it's both an advantage and a disadvantage.
Okay.
The advantage being the way that I started it. I don't think that would have been possible if it wasn't.
So you got support. Because it was for purpose, it connected with some of your customers who said, I'm with you. Right. So it got you traction, it got you brand awareness, it got you sales.
It gets a lot of support as well. People are willing to offer support and guidance, and maybe they're willing to do that in other situations too. I'm only going by my own experience. This is my only business that I've operated properly. So I think that it's probably brought me a lot of lovely support that I don't think if I was just selling sanitary pads for the sake of it, I would have received.
Yeah. So you talked about some perhaps negatives or?
The negatives, I think the negatives come down to trying to exist in the traditional business world as well. It's not quite, I think it's social enterprises gaining more popularity and understanding, but still relatively like small and strange way of doing business. And I think that when it comes to it probably suits me in that way because I'm not a traditional kind of minded person where I would approach a bank or go down those paths for finance. They kind of scare me. But I have noticed in the past if I've dipped my toe in and like thought about getting an investor or something, I always get told, "Oh no, you're giving away 50% of your profits. We don't care. We don't want anything to do with that." So that probably in the beginning, maybe it wasn't a negative, maybe it was to my positive. Like it was good for the business because I didn't bring on debt or I didn't bring on any like venture capital or anything like that. That means that I do have complete control.
Yeah, that's I suppose that's partly due to the fact that you're the sole owner as well, not just that it's a social enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like look, it depends on the kind of. There are a lot of investors and buyers who they'll buy they'll buy a property or a share or a business if they can just manage it and get a return. So I imagine I'm aware of other for-purpose or I've done a reasonable amount of work in this sector, and there's some businesses that are get all that sort of early traction you got, and they have contemplated and a few have sold, but it's been to a particular kind of investor. So I think partly it's very frustrating that someone just sees that as as a drain on the profits, whereas for anybody with a sort of broader perspective, just say that it's a cost of doing business. It's a different cost. Someone else might spend, $10,000 a month. I don't know, like a fortune on pay-per-click or or advertising in a magazine. So it's just another cost of doing business, really.
Yes, and it might be that like I really only have this experience to go off, and I haven't run another more traditional business before, and so I'm not sure if I'm best placed to have a big opinion on what the benefits and negatives are.
Yeah, but it didn't get in the way of this potential sale, though, did it? It sounds like it was more a part of the reason it was appealing because you had a brand and it was differentiated and it was sustainable.
Yes, and I remember someone did approach me before this person, just touching, just saying, would be interested in buying it, and then had just like a really brief conversation with them and realised that they had no intention of continuing on the 50% of profit donation. That wasn't, that was probably why I went into my meeting with her in the beginning, just wanting to suss out where she stood on that and if we were aligned in our values.
Yeah.
Because selling to someone who didn't have that intention, the business would not succeed. Like it just would lose all its integrity.
Yeah, and it's you're going to it's like call it financial engineering. Chop out that cost or that distribution because it takes away from the bottom line. But the top line, your customers' sales can dissipate pretty quickly if they see that. I mean, I think the whole cause, social enterprise, for purpose sector, there's a lot of, there's a lot of interesting small businesses bubbling. Call them businesses bubbling away, and there is this. I think for them to be successful, they have to, keep a financial base, and they have to have, some kind of financial return that's that sustains the business. Otherwise,
yes,
it'll be back to relying on donations and
grants and things,
which is just so. There's this, it's a fascinating trend, and I think over the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be a lot of those that migrate to the point where they're actually financially viable as well as a for-purpose cause or social enterprise business. And there's going to be this real moment like you had, which is, should I sell this thing? And the owners of those businesses will be the same as the owners of any other business. They will have put a lot of time and effort, and they're entitled to take a break, do something different, and even take some compensation for all the, what they've put into it. So yeah, interesting times ahead for that sector. But look, for you, it was it was a core part of getting started. So you've got the runways in front of you. You've got plenty of time to, maybe 5 years, I think you said, to kind of put your head down and keep growing the business. I was really keen to draw this. It's been a really wonderful chat with you, Roz. We did some work together, and I've admired the way you've gone about taking on building a business from scratch with for the reasons you did. And one of the things I want out of a podcast is for other owners to hear what you are saying to them through this conversation. So if you were to, I'm putting you on the spot here, but let's have a crack. If you were to say to other owners of businesses, forget whether they're for profit, for purpose, doesn't really matter. If owners of other businesses, particularly small businesses, what would you say to them about the process of running, preparing, and then selling, that they could keep in the back of their minds as they go about running their business on a day-to-day basis?
So what would I say to them about?
Well, what would you say to them about would you say to them change, do things differently day to day with a mind to that eventually down the track you will want to sell? Or
I think probably it's a good idea to just put yourself in the position of, what if someone did come knocking on your door, and would you want to sell it? And if you do, why? And if you don't, why not? And maybe go from there. Like, it can just, I remember being in such turmoil when it first happened, because I was like, what do I want? I don't know. And
so you hadn't asked yourself that question before? You hadn't really needed to?
No, I think it's quite a nice exercise to do, to put yourself through that process, even if it's not, you don't have to because it's not real, but try it out, and you might come out of it. Maybe if you're kind of feeling a bit you're not loving what you're doing, or you're challenged by things, maybe it might come out the other side of it feeling enlightened in some way, or more positive and
more committed to the business.
Yes. Yeah. I think it just kind of like shakes the rug a little bit underneath you, and it goes, why am I doing this? And and if it isn't to sell it, what is it that I like, and how can I make it more about that?
Look, it is really excellent advice, and it's I think it comes from being, and I'm the same. I run my business and I'm in it every day and working hard, but to kind of put your head up and think about why, you're in this thing and what you want out of it is, don't wait for someone to knock on the door to do that, though, is what you're saying.
And just, I don't know if there's some prompts that you can find online to ask those questions, or I think being prepared for that moment, if it does happen, will save you a lot of stress.
No, look, excellent. No, really, really excellent and practical advice from someone who's in it. And we look at in the work I do, I try to encourage that very thinking through getting people to understand what their business would look like to potential buyers. And sometimes it's a real shock, and sometimes it's a pleasant surprise. But just you need that independent perspective on things, and probably on a regular basis, because things can get away on you, and technology can shift, and markets can shift, and brands and consumers can change. Roz, look, that's been thank you so much for your time and for your very generous and honest input to the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
A very big thanks again to Roz Campbell from Tsuno for being so open and sharing some of that really rich personal experience. I hope it helped. You can listen back to the full interview on the Small Business Banter podcast. Just search it up in your favourite podcast catcher. In the next 2 weeks, I'll feature an interview with James Murphy, a coffee and social entrepreneur, on his experiences selling one of his for-purpose cafes. So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.